So, having gone through and mapped out all of these different journey stages and thought about the goals we might have at each stage, as well as how we go through and measure it, we can turn to talking next about narratives. Narratives are super cool, and I like to think about them as being like a tent. A tent that can house 100 different ad ideas underneath it. So a narrative is like a big picture meta message, right? It's a bigger idea of something that you're trying to communicate to consumers. What we're going to find is that the messages we're trying to tell, or the narratives we're trying to tell at journey stages, are going to change and evolve. There's different goals we have at each journey stage, and as a result, there's different messaging we want to be getting across to people, to consumers who are looking at our ads. So we can go down here and we can add in this other row, narratives, for all these different journey stages. And we can think of having at least one, maybe two, maybe more, narratives that we're trying to get across at each stage. When it comes to narratives, what you want to be thinking about is what's going to be relevant for a given persona at that particular stage. You also want to be thinking about what type of value is important to that persona at that stage. And are there any things that are unique or special about your client that you can try and stress or get across that are relevant, especially at that stage too? So again, thinking about your persona, thinking about that stage, thinking about what your goal is, thinking about what kind of value you're trying to get across for your consumer, and then also thinking about how your client is unique compared to competitors. It's a lot to go through and think about, but it's why it makes developing narratives so powerful. Once you have them down, there's tons of different ad ideas that will likely come to you based on that narrative. In other words, there's a ton of different ways of saying the same message or expressing the same message through to consumers. So we can pop in and take a look at developing a narrative for the awareness or initial consideration stage. If we're thinking back to that car example, what are some narratives that car companies typically are trying to get across at this stage? It could be, our car will make you look cool. It might seem kind of silly, but that is something that often comes across, right? So that could be an example of an overarching narrative at this particular journey stage, right? If you think about all the car ads we see, tons of them are trying to get across that if you buy this car, you will look cool. Another narrative car companies often have is just that our car is new and sexy. They're trying to showcase a brand new model or redesign, and they do that through beautiful shots of the car speeding through coastlines at golden hour sunsets. So we can go in and add, our car is new and sexy, as another potential narrative for this initial consideration or awareness stage. Next up is evaluation. This one's kind of fun, because in many cases what we see here is a very different narrative getting expressed than what we saw at the beginning. So we might see really, speeding cars going through mountains and cool sunsets and stuff happening in the initial consideration stage. When we move to evaluation, think about what consumers care about here. In many cases, it could be price, right? It could be financing that's available. It could be how safe the car is, how reliable the car is, how practical it is, right? All of these different things are very different concerns than just going through and feeling sexy and cool. At the evaluation stage, many people who have families care a lot about safety. So it might be the case that you're trying to go through and get across a narrative that our car is really safe. Another narrative could be that our car is super fast. Maybe you want to go through and convey the performance aspects. Maybe it's that our car is reliable. Another narrative could be going through and is getting across the idea that the car is affordable. So maybe it's, our car is affordable. And you could imagine different creative ways of getting that across in ads. At the purchase stage, we want to be thinking about what types of narratives, what types of messages are going to motivate consumers to come in and buy something. One of them is obviously going to be having a sale. So it could just be, we are having a sale. While sales can be a really effective tool for getting consumers to come in and buy, that narrative can kind of grow old if you do it all the time. It's kind of like crying wolf every day. People really don't care if it's always the way things are. Another big thing about sales is that they're actually expensive for you as a company. If you're constantly giving stuff away at 20% off, that's a lot of margin you're losing. So think about other ways you might get consumers to come in and buy something today without putting it on special. One idea is to go through and have limited editions. So by putting out a message of we are almost out of something, you can motivate consumers to come in because they want to buy something because they're about to miss out on it. So it could be limited editions or limited stock you have. That kind of a message might motivate consumers to come in rather than wait till next month or next year to buy something. At the consume stage, think about messages that are going to be helpful for consumers. So it could be things like, we are here to help. Maybe you just want people to reach out and ask you questions if they're having issues setting something up or using something. Maybe it's, our device is easy to install. If I could type. At the advocacy stage, think about what types of narratives, what types of messages you might be able to tell consumers to make them want to tell other people about you, right? One of these narratives could be, our business is family run. Telling people that you're a small business and that you rely on word of mouth to make money can be really motivating. People might want to go through and help you out, especially if they've had a great time with you. Another narrative that you might be trying to get across at the advocacy stage could be one like, posting about us is fun. This seems really simple, but there's a ton of different ways you could bring this to life. You could do it through contests, you could do it through highlighting other people who do post about you. It could be going through and actually modeling people, taking photos of themselves and posting those. All these different things you could do to bring to life this overarching message that you're trying to convey to consumers. To, post about us, it's fun, it's exciting to do, it's the cool thing to do. And finally, when it comes to bond, the narrative could be as simple as, we care about you. So we've gone through and we thought about all of these different journey stages, thought about what it is we're trying to focus on to achieve as a marketer at each stage, and then also gone through and thought about different examples of narratives that could apply at these different stages. You want to go through and do the same thing for your own client. Think about which particular objectives are ones you care about at each stage and are ones you can go through and actually measure. And then you also want to go through and develop these narratives. Develop a narrative, at least one for each particular stage for that particular persona, the one that you care about the most. You also want to go through and think about, are you getting across what is unique and special about your particular client and the value that consumers really benefit from at that particular stage. So it's a really fun spreadsheet to go through and develop. I'll post this one up and make it available to you. You can use it as an example and edit that and play with it, but start looking at each of these two different things, your objectives, and then also your narratives at all of these different journey stages in this larger process.